both sides of the conversation family. We welcome you to this virtual space crafted especially for you. My name is Jada Curry, and I'm both sides of the conversation's marketing director and graphics design specialist. I want to take some time to ground us all as a community into this space we are about to open up in, so let's go through our community standards. Both sides of the conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation, so we ask that you all be respectful of that. We also ask that you be respectful of each panelist, host, and participant. We do encourage healthy debates and conversations. Don't personalize anything with anyone. This includes name-calling, bullying, trolling, or shaming. This will not be allowed or tolerated. Your perspective is yours. It is not a prescription. You do not have to agree, but show respect. These community standards apply to all of our live shows and any virtual spaces that we hold on social media, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We want to make sure that we are caring for each other as a community. This is our priority in all of our endeavors as both sides of the conversation. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's show and continue to stay in touch with us via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or all of them. All right, thank you for listening and see you soon.
Welcome, everybody, to both sides of the conversation. I'm John Henry, Executive Director. Today is Tuesday. It's Tuesday. Look at me. I'm all lost on the day. Today is Sunday. We're going to be having our Sunday conversation. See, I'm already thinking ahead about Tuesday. Phenomenal hidden gem segment coming up. But this is our Sunday conversation. We join here every Sunday at 2 p.m. for our community conversations. Today is a very, very important conversation. We have the board president of the San Francisco Supervisors, Shaman Walton, on today, and he's going to update community about some of the things that's going on with the board of supervisors, some of the legislative things that's being in place, and just taking conversation and questions from community. So excited to have Brother Shaman here. It's always an honor to have him in space. As he promised, he'll be back again as we had him last year, and he's back this year to update community where things are for community and things that we're doing in San Francisco to move us forward. So just excited about that. A couple of things. One, I just want to give prayers out to Camila Betty, who's a big part of our organization, who's been dealing with her sickle cell fight, and she's been in a hospital. So just want to give her love and prayers and let her know that we're praying for you. And we're just going to keep uplifting her spirits and until she get back on her feet, as we all here at both sides of the conversation continue this year to focus on health and wealth in our Black community. And sickle cell is one of those topics that are impacting our community, as well as breast cancer and a number of other health disparities and issues that impact in our community. So we're going to keep highlighting those conversations and make sure that we are advocating and doing our part to help those community members who are impacted by those diseases and those health issues. So just wanted to put that out there. Also, just wanted to give a huge shout out to all of our sponsors who continue to support us. And, this journey that we're doing here at both sides of the conversation, it's a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of intersections, just networking and connecting with folks. And it takes us all as we try to uplift our community. So just thank you all for continuing to support these efforts of what we do here. We're going to go ahead and jump into some of the community announcements and some of the things that's going on, and then we'll be going on ahead and getting started with today's segment. If you all would like to ask questions to Brother Shaman Walton today, or you have any concerns or questions that you would like him to answer, please use the live chat function on our YouTube channel or on our Facebook page so that we could get those questions up to the President Shaman Walton to answer those questions if need be. So please utilize our YouTube and we'll get those questions up. As you all know, the war has been intensifying in Ukraine. There was talks over the weekend that was supposed to happen, but it seems like it's not working out, as Putin is saying Ukraine's future is doubtful in their ceasefire talks. Continued countries and different corporate organizations have been part of the sanctions that's been placed on Russia and MasterCard, Visa Card, a number of other organizations have implemented suspending their financial ties and their business ties with Russia. So Russia's financial system been taking some hits over this weekend. So as those sanctions start to roll out, there's going to be a lot of impact, not only in Russia, but across the world. As you all see, the gas prices here in the Bay Area and across California is going out of the roof. People been sending me pictures all through Southern California, up here to Northern California overnight. Gas prices have went from $5.50 to $6.10, $6.75 in some places. I've even experienced at the gas pump. It is ridiculous. So definitely the conversation of inflation and gas costs and the impacts of this war is going to be impacting our communities heavily. So we're going to have to definitely, as community, work together and figure out, how do we support each other? How do we make sure these community resources that we have get out to our community folks and make sure that they are supported, because we're going to need it more than ever. Also, as we are approaching the summertime months, as you all know, there's have been a great shortfall of rain here in California. So we're going to have to get not only prepared for that, all of our California communities, not only here in the Bay Area, but across this great state, we're going to have to be really mindful of our water usage. As this water shortage is going to impact us as we approach these summer months, as well as our wildfires. So community, do your part now and start reducing your water usage as much as possible, as well as your lines, sprinklers in your line systems and things of that nature, as we're going to be impacted this year with the water shortage. Also, here in California, a number of issues that's been impacted. I know most of you've seen it. The city controller and the mayor of San Diego has put in that San Diego has surpassed San Francisco as the least affordable city in the U.S. As you all know, the prices of homes are jumping crazily in California. The mayor was saying of San Diego, a 1,500 square foot property is now medium asking prices about $1.4 million in San Diego. As you all know, most California cities have been impacted by the increase of housing costs, which also impacts our communities as folks are having trouble to secure housing, food. So we are dealing with a number of issues that are impacting us here in this state. And we're going to have to figure out some ways collectively and through the state how we're going to help curb some of this housing needs and issues so that our communities can have somewhere to stay. It is getting tough for folks to get housing here in California, especially in the Bay Area. And now San Diego has surpassed the Bay Area. So tremendous work that's going to be done. And it's going to be a lot of support needed to keep our community, families, and housing situations here in California. So with that being said, some of our community events that are taking place, as you all know, every Saturday night, Cafe Envy is still going to be having a karaoke night. That is at 1701 Yosemite Street. The doors open up at 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. with DJ Hyphy. They got food, drinks, and all that. So we want to continue to patronize and support our Black businesses. And Cafe Envy is one of those spots. So every Saturday, come check out karaoke nights. Also, the Saturday Community Collective Gathering is having poetry and words of wisdom. That is Saturday, March 12th at 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. And then they're going to have a love, self-romantic, platonic words of wisdom. This is an online event. They're going to have it. I will be sending out the Evite information. So if you would like to sign up and be a part of that poetry, we'll get that out to community as well. Also, the Baby Hunters Point drop-off pediatric COVID-19 vaccine location is happening at the 1800 Oakdale Avenue every Friday and Saturdays, 9:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. If you have information, there's an appointment-based drop-in for our young folks to get their booster shots and COVID second or first shots there. That's going to be happening at the 1800 Oakdale Avenue every Friday and Saturday. So please register for that. We'll get the information out on our social media as well. The Pear Tree Community School Black Futures is happening March 11th, 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. at 2150 Levenson Street in Oakland. We want to get families out there to support. As you all know, the Oakland School District is going through a major change and closing down schools. And this is one of the Black Future connections over there in Oakland as they're trying to get community to support keeping our schools open for our young folks. Also, for both sides of the conversation announcement, you can continue to support us on our Amazon Smile. You could donate to both sides of the conversation. Choose us as one of your charitable organizations. You do not have any extra cost to you as a Prime Amazon user, but every time you purchase something, if you sign us up as one of the charitable organizations, Amazon will make a donation to our organization to help support the efforts that we are doing. This Tuesday, like I said earlier, we'll be having our Hidden Gem segment. We have some phenomenal folks coming on this Tuesday, as well as SF Rebels. And then next Thursday, we're going to have an Educational Thursday presentation. So we're looking forward to that. And we'll be getting that out to community as the week comes on. A lot of changes, a lot of things happening. Again, we're going to continue to do the work that we need to do here at both sides of the conversation to help our community. It's a lot of things. We are in crisis. There's been a number of violent shootings and things that's taken place across San Francisco, as well as the Bay Area. And we just want to make sure that we continue these conversations and continue to engage our folks about what's going on and how to be a part of it. And also this redistricting that is taking place in our city and is happening in a number of parts of the cities across the Bay Area. Want community to get involved. And hopefully today, Brother Shaman Walter could bring us some more light of that as well, because I know community has a lot of questions about this redistricting. What does it mean to our community? What does it mean to the Black and Brown community? And how it's going to impact us? So hopefully he'll be able to shed some light on that and talk about some of the other things that's going on that community has comments or concerned. And again, community, if you want to ask questions or if you want to ask President Walton anything, please utilize the live chat function on our YouTube or on our Facebook page, and we'll get those up for President Walton today. So with that being said, I'm going to close my mouth now. Enough of me. You have heard enough announcements. We're going to go ahead and bring up our guest today, President Supervisor Shaman Walton. Welcome to both sides of the conversation, good brother. Glad to have you back in space with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Happy Sunday, everybody. It's good to see you, John, and it's good to just have another moment to take the time to have a conversation. So appreciate you.
No problem. Well, it's always great to have you in space, and just having your leadership at the helm of what's going on, not only in the community, but in the city, your advocacy. We just appreciate it. And, as community folks, we just have to stand behind the leadership that we have in place with you and Director Davis and the mayor, and continue to push our communities forward. So just excited to be here with you and just talk about some of the things that's coming up and some of the ways community can get involved to help impact some of the things that are taking place in San Francisco. So with that being said, I want to jump right into it. One of the biggest questions that's been coming out as we start approaching the end of the fiscal year, people want to know about the budget and some of the changes and things that's going on. And I know it's approaching, but just wanted to get some insight from you of what you seeing and what you thinking the budget as they're starting to work out some of those things and carving things out, how you think that's going to play out for community and folks that are utilizing and looking forward to those resources coming to community.
Well, the one thing I just thought out from a budget standpoint is we are in a good place as a city. We have about $130 million surplus. But with that said, we also have a lot of different needs, a lot of things that we have to address during the budget process. We are hopefully at the final stint of the negative impacts of the pandemic. We have to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure the positive outcomes from the pandemic continue. We got to make sure that folks can eat. We got to still address affordability, still address the issues and concerns of folks that are unhoused and on our streets. Got to make sure that we address the mental health issues and concerns and a lot of the quality of life issues that change during the pandemic. But it is a good feeling to be in a place where we do have a surplus. People should know also Supervisor Haney, who is in the lead right now for a state assembly race, who was the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, is not going to be chair as of March 10th. Supervisor Ronan will come on as the chair of the Budget Committee. And so there are going to be changes as we are fighting to make sure our budget is reflective of the values and needs for us here in San Francisco. But the process is going on right now. The mayor is giving her budget directions. City departments are now coming to us and letting us know what they plan to do with their budgets. And we're going to continue to work towards the goals of addressing community needs and concern within the budget process. So a lot of work to do moving forward, nowhere near even getting close to finalizing the budget process. In fact, we're really just getting started, but we are hopeful because we are in a position where we have resources to put into community and address the needs and concerns that I know a lot of folks out here want to make sure we are able to address.
Yeah, I mean, it's very powerful stuff. I mean, in this budget year is going to be, very, very important to community organization and to community folks who are looking for resources and support as we are kind of slowing down with the pandemic. But there are so many needs that's going to come out of this pandemic, from mental health to housing support, substance abuse, just a small portion of the things that are impacting us. But when we talk about the budget, some of the things that you, the mayor, have been able to put together with the Dreamkeeper initiative, and that's been moving our communities forward with opportunities. But seeing some of the stuff, as I'm one of the watchdog members, and just seeing some of the stuff that's taking place. And like you said, there's a long shot of stuff that we have to get addressed in this city. When we're looking at the city departments and when you do the review and kind of look at overall, outside of the Dreamkeeper initiative that you all put forward, to look at what the different departments are allocating to support the Black and Brown community has definitely been alarming, to just be the least to say, to see the less amount of investment that our community and our city departments have invested into the Black community. How do we really, as you all are talking about the budget and moving forward, how do we get these city department heads to actually understand and actually stand behind their true stance behind investing in the Black community and giving that equity? We looked at about, I know it's 55 departments in the city, but the top 25 departments have invested less than about 12%, most of them less than 12% of their overall budgets invested back into the Black community. Moving forward in these conversations, how do we get the leadership, the heads of these departments, to really understand the true economical and social impact that our community have and needs, and to really get them invested behind supporting outside of the Dreamkeeper initiative to make sure our community get that support from those departments?
Well, obviously, it's up to me as a member of the Board of Supervisors and my colleagues, also up to the mayor's office and her team, to hold our city departments accountable and to say, look, you got to look at what the data demonstrates in terms of where resources are needed. How do we get them out to community, and how do we get them out the door of our city departments? But I look at it as my role, one, to make sure that I am asking the right questions to city departments. I am pushing policy towards making sure that the communities that need us most. And at the end of the day, right now, if we look at the data, if we look at some of the things that have affected the Black community and also other communities of color, it's very evident that that's where our resources need to go. And that's why we continue to work on strategies and push policies that are going to make sure that that investment happens. It's no small feat that we were able to get the $120 million for the Dreamkeeper initiative in a city where population is around 5% or less than 5% for Black folks. But again, to your point, we can't stop there. We have to let people understand the importance of investment in the Black community. We have to let people understand the importance of making sure that all cultures can remain here in San Francisco. And if we don't do that, we're going to see a city that is going to look a lot different than what we grew up in, going to look a lot different than what we all want to see. And those changes have already been made. But that investment in the Black community, investment and communities of color, is a benefit to the entire city of San Francisco. And we got to make sure that people continue to understand that. You can't have folks who work in certain service industry. You can't have folks who provide childcare and opportunities for our families if they can't live in the same city that they're supposed to be a part of. And unless we make that investment, we're going to lose so much culture moving forward here in San Francisco. And that, of course, includes the Black community and everything that we have to bring here to San Francisco.
Man, that's very powerful. And I also, while we on that, about what we need to bring economics to our community, this week you sworn in Tiffany Carter, our sister over at SF Black Wall Street, as one of the business commissioners. And, that's one of the important things. Like you said, if we don't get in front of how we change our community and invest with ownership, our communities definitely are going to change. I know you've been the supervisor of District 10 for a while now, and just over the years, the amount of change that's taken place, and it's changing so fast. How do we invest to get our home ownership numbers back up, our business ownership? What I'm seeing is, I know the creation of the Black Wall Street Road back there on Jennings, but how do we get that true ownership back? And I know you're working on the reparations as well, a lot of things that you're doing to impact us. But how significant is it going to be to get funding into our community to get true ownership with our businesses? Because a lot of the Black businesses, they have space, but they're lease space. And with lease space, if you don't have ownership at any time with leasing, or the development planning changes and our community could get pushed out again. So how do we really advocate in these different plans with reparation and different investments to get true ownership in our community so that we can have stakeholders of the community process, live, and do business here?
Well, first, I want to address your point about making sure that we have representation on commissions, representations at the elected levels, representation in leadership of nonprofits, representation just in community that looks and feels like the community that we from, the community that we support. That's important. That's one reason why we were able and focused to get Tiffany on a small business commission, but we still have a lot of work to do to make sure that the Black community is represented in all aspects of leadership here in San Francisco. But I'm going to do everything I can while I'm in this role to highlight the hard work of the Black community, highlight the hard work of Black leadership, and put people in space and in position to be leaders in this city, because we need leaders that our young people can look up to. We need leaders that our young women can look up to. And that's something that is always going to be important to me in this role and everything I do. And so I was excited to be able to do that, but it's a lot more work that we have to do to make sure we keep Black leadership in the forefront. I think if you look at one of the investments that we made with the Dreamkeeper Initiative and the resources that were carved out, a big part of that portfolio is home ownership. And the one thing we're going to have to be able to do is help people with their down payments. We're going to have to be able to help people clear their credit. And these are things we already know, have had conversations about, but the bulk of the issue and the bulk of the problem with being able to purchase here in San Francisco for Black folks and people in general is being able to pay that down payment. And that is something that I've been working to make sure we carve out resources for. And it can't be $10,000. It can't be $20,000. It's going to take a big chunk of money for a lot of folks to be able to afford down payments. Then if you look at, we have the new housing that's going to be coming on Jamestown, just for an example, and there's going to be a certain amount of BMR home ownership units. And so I've been working to put things in place with MoCD so that families who go into those homes don't have to worry about the down payment. That's something that the city is going to pay for, something that the developer is going to pay for. We have to have policies and strategies like that in place. Most of us can go out and buy a home in San Francisco, not just because of the mortgage and the how expensive it will be for monthly expenses, but the bottom line is coming up with that down payment on a home where you have a median average for a home price of $1.2 million. Who got that kind of money? And that goes for the middle class, that goes for upper middle class, and most definitely for folks in community who have been struggling for years. So as we work on our reparations, as we continue to flesh out all the aspects of the Dreamkeeper Initiative, big investment in terms of down payments for home ownership has to be a big part of how we're going to achieve that success for home ownership.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. I've been on a couple of those calls with the Dreamkeeper folks about the housing down payments and some of the services that they're looking at. But one of the things that I brought up, and I got to bring that to the MOCD as well, is they're leveraging these old style programs to like attach the equity to the city, right? And it's like if our folks, I mean, you have to do certain things to get them in there, but I'm agreeing with you, and I'm glad that you're saying that we have to find another way to get more than a $10,000 deposit. When you talk about the average home in San Francisco running about $1 million to $1.5 million, right? You're talking $100,000 is like the investment that people are going to actually need to get into the house, and then to make that transition and to have that equity, right? Because it's like some of the contract information or some of the information that I've seen out there, I was like, it's kind of a catch-22, because if you're talking $7,000 to $8,000 a month is what a person's going to have to sustain it, right? Not including, the maintenance and whatever else is going to take place. Sometimes if you don't have that, especially with a two-family household, and most folks that we're talking about, we're dealing with that's working class in District 10 or across the city, most of them are single parents. It's a slim to none shot on a lot of them, and being able to have that type of, discretionary funds saved to get out of those jams if something takes place, which then benefits the program because then the city still gets that power and authority to control that housing. So it is a lot of work. I think these are the conversations that we're going to have to find out. One of the things that I've been saying is part of the reparations are when we talking about home ownership, right? In San Francisco, since we're talking about the Black and brown communities and our Black folks, especially, who are getting hit the hardest when it comes to home ownership, how do we alleviate those homeowner taxes, right? Because that's a big part of it. The housing taxes a year could cost a family, dramatically. And, how do we tie that into maybe a way of reparations or a way of some kind of house credit in this home buying process to get them access? Because it could be a tremendous hardship on community folks who are trying to make that transition. There's so many government programs out there that are happening that just not working. When you look at NACA and some of these other programs, I mean, these folks are going to 2, 3, 4 years trying to get into a home. And sometimes those programs still doesn't deliver that type of support that they need. So how do we continue the conversation to curtail, these type of programs that'll definitely be beneficial? And then what about our folks, like you said, that are right there, maybe working for the city, are able to pay all of their bills, but don't have that discretionary fund? We don't want to hold them off for 3 years to get in home ownership. We want to have some kind of support system to get them in there to continue paying the bills like they have, and giving them that blessing to get that kickstart.
Yeah, and I'm always going to be a resource-focused person. My thing is you figure out how we get the resources in the hands of the people, in the hands of the community that needs it. And that's how we help to alleviate certain burdens. As we have conversations about taxes are necessary. That's how we get a lot of stuff done in San Francisco. Quite frankly, it's the reason why we are able to put a lot of programs in place that do address the needs of the communities that we want to serve. So I'm more about, let's focus on how we get their increased resources into the hands of community so that their lives can improve, so that we can address the wealth gaps that exist by making sure that the opportunities are equitable across the playing field. And a big piece of that is making sure that revenue generated from the city, making sure that resources that come into our community are increased and are to a certain point where people can actually afford to be successful, afford to achieve, afford to live, afford to thrive in San Francisco. And I'm going to continue to focus on finding the resources.
Man, that's powerful stuff, man. And that's what we need, other folks to be solution-based. And that's what we want to be a part of. How do we get that solution? And we're working with folks as much as we can to help. But we also got to get our community engaged. And that's one thing I want to jump into, too, is, one thing about your leadership that I appreciate is, you always in community with community folks. You always leave an open door policy to community. But just wanted to get your perspective, because D10 is growing. A lot of things are coming down the pipeline for D10 when we talk about the housing change. But, from your perspective, Shaman, looking at D10, where we going, the assessment that you're making from the lens of your eyes, how do we, move this community forward, even though changes are going to happen? I mean, that change is always good, but how do we get our community folks to adapt to that change? And then just your assessment of where we at and some of the hurdles that we're going to have to overcome here in D10 to bring that prosperity and to bring some of that impacted resources that you said to community.
Well, the one thing I want to say is it's an exciting time for District 10. We are building pretty much the most housing in San Francisco, the most affordable housing, with Pier 70, with the power station, with the work that's on the way once we get the final design at Candlestick. We are doing an amazing job with our Hope SF projects, addressing the public housing changes and needs that had to happen. And our communities are being revitalized. If you go to Potrero Hill, if you go to Sunnydale, if you go to Alice Griffith, if you go to Huntersview, we have a lot of new homes there. Folks were able to stay in the community that they grew up in, the community that they've been a part of. We've been able to build adjacent to where folks were so they could actually stay on site and move into these brand new homes. And that's something that's been very important for community. A lot of work to do, of course, to finish financing the entire projects for all those public housing communities to make sure that all the needs of folks in these properties are addressed, particularly dealing with property management, particularly dealing with the city. But in terms of the opportunity that is on the way, it's golden for us here in San Francisco, and particularly in District 10. If we look at some of the things that the pandemic has done to slow down at least some of the growth, we've seen increased number of folks living on the streets, and particularly living in vehicles here in District 10. And that's something that had to be addressed. That's something that we've put things in place and strategies in place to address that with the vehicle triage center. A lot of people don't know that we have 3 navigation centers in District 10. We have an RV site at Pier 94. We have a safe sleeping site right in front of Mother Brown's. And we have programs and services that are really set on finding out the needs of community, finding out what the concerns are for folks who live on the street, and placing them either into shelter and long-term housing, which of course, affordable housing is how we're going to achieve that. If we look at the pandemic in terms of businesses lost in San Francisco, and we've done a lot with grants and no interest loan programs as a city. But if we look in District 10, if we look at our 3rd Street corridor, where we've seen an increase of businesses on the corridor, if we look at what we're doing now and what's happening on Leland Street, and businesses that are coming in and are on the way. And if we look at how businesses were able to maintain in Potrero Hill, like there's a lot of great things going on for District 10. I don't even know if people know that we have four projects in the park bond, 4 projects that we were able to get into the park bond: Jackson Park, Hers Playground, India Basin, and of course we share border with McLaren Park with a couple of other districts. So there are so many things that we've done to move this district forward, to increase the economic opportunities for small businesses. We changed 14B policy to where now we have small businesses who have a better chance to serve on some of these bigger projects that are happening in our district. If you look at the sewer system improvement program, which our community has had to deal with the impacts of that smell, of that stench, of the negative environmental impacts since I was a puppy growing up here in the district. And so if we look at the build out of that and all the things that was put in place to make sure that our contractors have opportunity, to make sure that our folks in community have the jobs on projects like that, there's a lot of amazing things. We're going to have the new community facility at 1550 Evans Street. That's going to be amazing to replace what is at Oakdale. That belongs to community, is for community. State of the art, brand new building right here in our very own district. We got a new grocery store coming to the old Walgreens site at Bayview Plaza, something that we've been fighting for. We have a new grocery outlet on Bayshore. We've been working with Food Co. to improve their products and improve the physical state of the building and the facility. So we got a lot of good things that are not only here, but a lot of good things on the way. If we look at, when we talk about all the big issues that people are concerned about in San Francisco, affordability. We're building affordable housing, thousands of units on the way and being built right now. When we talk about addressing the issues and concerns around making sure folks who are unhoused have opportunities, and making sure folks who live in our communities are able to also enjoy the community that they live in while we work with our unhoused population, their responses and answers to that. We passed illegal dumping legislation. We're going to have cameras out now. The Department of Public Works can write their own citations for folks who are caught dumping illegally. We're going to have cameras on the scene where we can catch folks, go back and give them tickets. I tried to put legislation in place where we could take their cars if they're caught dumping, and that's something that state law wouldn't allow us to do. But most certainly, we're focused on everything that addresses our quality of life across the entire district and across San Francisco. So I'm just hopeful that things are going to continue to go in a positive trajectory. Naturally, we have to make sure that we can get businesses to stay here in San Francisco, make sure that we deal with the issues that have affected us negatively with the pandemic. We got to get folks back into our stores, back into downtown communities. But the way we do that is to continue to make sure that we promote all that's great about San Francisco. I remember having conversations with a lot of folks in community about a month ago. I mean, it was February. We had 70-degree weather. So we got to promote all the things that are amazing and great about San Francisco. And then the last thing I'll just say, and we've all talked about public safety, which is of major importance for us here in the district. And my focus has always been to, one, address all types of crime, but make sure that we also have a specific plan in place that addresses violence, that works to prevent and intervene and eliminate violence in our community. We have a comprehensive plan that works to coordinate with everyone who's responsible for intervening and preventing violence, whether it is our community-based organizations, whether it's our street violence intervention and prevention team, whether it's our district attorney's office, public defender's office, our San Francisco Police Department. Our plan is comprehensive. It was developed with each of the communities here in District 10. And so it provides a violence prevention coordinator. It provides resources to go in areas to address violence, more community ambassadors, more boots on the ground, more folks in the street, making sure that opportunities are available to keep people safe. And we're going to continue to do that. If you go to my website, shamonwalton.com, you're going to not only see the things that we've done, you'll see that we set out to do work when we ran for office in 2018. We put out a complete policy platform that said, this is what we're going to address. This is what we're going to do. And most certainly, we put policies in place. We put legislation in place. We put strategies in place to address all of those issues and concerns. And we're going to continue to do that. It's a lot of work to do in a district of this size. It's a lot of work to do in a district with this much diversity. But most certainly, we put people in position. We put strategies in position to address the needs and concerns. If you look at the diversity, if you look at my office and the fact that we have language capacity in both Chinese and Spanish, and we work hard to make sure that if there's any area or any ethnicity or any group that is not receiving support that they need, then we will go out and do everything we can to find a way to be responsive to everything. And last thing I'll just say to answer your question in terms of how excited I am about the future of the district, but also just about what we do as an office. We will always be very responsive to community. And if somebody reaches out to our office, now you might not always like the response that we give. You might not always like the amount of time it may take to address an issue or concern, but most certainly we are going to be responsive. We're going to respond to your concerns and do the best we can to come up with a solution when there is one that we can push forward to make happen. And we're going to continue to do that regardless.
Man, that's great stuff. And, I'm excited too about the new Evans Street project, just with the amount of skilled trades and things that they're going to be able to offer to our community. And, I just want to really appreciate you for that, because I think, a lot of times in our community, when we talk about workplace development and we talk about job opportunities, too many times our community folks are pushed into janitorial work and, some of these jobs that they're good jobs, just the livable, wageable jobs that impact us. So having a facility that'll be able to take folks in automotive and electricians and things of that nature, and hopefully, this location will be innovative enough to really push our community forward in this tech realm, because technology is really developing fast, with artificial intelligence, the amount of robotics, the amount of digital things that are taking place in our community, getting our folks an opportunity to go somewhere and get that type of education and training, I think is going to be very vital for our community moving forward. As technology takes over, we need to make sure that our folks on the low end and the elders of our community has access and an opportunity to learn some of that stuff. So I'm excited to see, how that all plays out. I think that's, a good face of where we're headed, and, just seeing our community thrive. I think getting those type of centers are going to be very important and pillars of our community to move our community forward. But, one of the things I wanted to hit on that you talked about a little bit was about leadership. And, that's something that I've been always here at both sides of the conversation. Has been a great a fight of mine, right? In talking to our community folks, and how do we get our elders of the community to transfer power and transfer that leadership. In San Francisco, we have a number of proud leaders who have put in a lot of groundwork to redevelop the community, to do things to help push our community forward. But it also comes a time, Shaman, when we talk about transitioning power, or we talk about passing the torch to the next generation, from your standpoint, I'm always trying to figure out how do we bridge that gap with our young folks. When I talk to the young folks, they feel like maybe they're not empowered because they don't get the results or the support that they need from the elders, or they don't understand them. And then we have our elders in the community saying the young folks don't want to listen, and they think they know all their way. But we are thriving and developing culture, with our folks. And, I just feel like from my perspective, too many times over the years, I've watched, sometimes our leadership goes to the casket with all the information and all the knowledge, right? How do we empower our elders of the community to reach back to our young folks and help uplift the next generation of leaders and freedom fighters? Because I think that's something important, and we got to have a conversation about it. And it's like great at a time where you're in leadership, and just to talk about how we engage our youth to empower them, because we need our young folks, because they're very talented. And I think sometimes as elders of the community, we get frustrated and we get stuck in our own ways. But I'm seeing a lot of gaps in San Francisco where we need to transition our power and start getting our young folks involved to help move this movement forward.
Well, one thing I want to say is, we are fortunate enough to stand on the shoulders of giants. We have a lot of examples that paved the way for us to be in the positions and the places that we are. And I want to pay homage to those trailblazers and those leaders that made it safe for me to be in this place, made and paved the way for opportunity for me to become the president of the board of supervisors, and for you to serve in your role and be a leader in community and provide a platform for folks to get voice out. So we always got to pay homage to the leadership that came before us and really gave us open the doors and kick down the doors that we were able to come through and continue to make powerful impact. But when you're in leadership, you have a responsibility to make sure that you provide space for folks who are younger than you and who look up to you, for them to have an opportunity. And I always talk to people and say, if you're not mentoring someone or being mentored by someone, that's problematic. And people have to let go. When you do your work and you get things done, and you've been successful at making sure community has opportunity, then you also have to make sure that the people that you taught to grow, the people that when you planted the seed and you watered it and you treated it like a gardener, you got to let those folks grow and be in those spaces and make those decisions. I think a lot of time, and Jeffrey Canada, who was overcharging the Harlem Children's Zone, said, and I heard him at we were at Policy Link had an equity summit in Los Angeles, and he said a lot of times elders work hard for decades before they achieve success in the things that they were trying to do, or before you see some of the things that you work so hard for coming to fruition. And so you work so hard for these number of years, and then the young people who come right behind you expect you to just move out the way after you just now seeing success in the work that you've done. But I also want to say, like, if you are leading the path and providing opportunity for community changes and shifts, and you have folks that you are bringing along with you, if you do everything right in your mentorship role, if you do everything right in your teaching role, then it should be easy for you to move out the way, because the people that you put in place are ready to lead and step forward. It's just like raising children. It's just like, when I was at Young Community Developers, and when I got there, we had 9 staff and only a $750,000 budget and a lot of disinvestment. And I talk about this all the time, but I was fortunate enough to be able to go out and get educated community young folks to come in who knew how to get work done, who knew the community, who knew how to lead, and the organization grew. And before I left, we had a $13 million budget, over 75 staff, and now it's grown astronomically. But that happened because I was like, I need to make sure that I bring in folks who are going to be here when I'm gone, bring in folks who are going to make sure that this organization that'll be 50 years old next year is able to be 75 years old, able to be 100 years old. And you got to step out the way. I knew when I became a member of the Board of Supervisors, at most, I would have 8 years in office. If I'm blessed and fortunate enough to get reelected in November, that's 8 years of getting work done and doing what I'm supposed to do in this role, but also making sure that somebody has opportunity to come in next and be successful in this role, so that we can continue to thrive as a district and continue to strive. So that was my long way of saying our leaders who have been around for a while have to, of course, provide mentorship and give young people an opportunity to lead in the spaces that they may have been used to leading in. But at the end of the day, if we do everything we can as leaders who may have been around for a while and give young people opportunity to lead, we got to trust that they're going to be able to take us over the next hump. Because it's even if you kick one door down, it's always going to be a few more doors that you got to kick down and kick in, and you're not going to be here forever. And I personally don't want to be 70, 80 years old if I'm fortunate enough to live that long doing the same thing that I'm doing right now. I want to see the young folks that I've had an opportunity to work with that are now in leadership be successful. If we look at, Dr. Saida Layata Tufu Birch, and someone who worked in YCD, started off as a tutor, then took over MAIP and is now over the Dreamkeeper Initiative. If we look at DeAndre Brookter, who worked with me at YCD at first as a director of operations, then became deputy director, then went over to the Southeast Community Facility and came back to YCD and now is the executive director. If we look at people like Percy Birch, who is in the office with me, who came to YCD first as a program assistant, my role is to just continue to do everything I can to put people in a position so that they can grow. So when I'm gone, we done what we supposed to do, and we go into the next thing that we're supposed to focus on at our age and stage in life. And if we don't leave something better than we found it, which also means making sure that you've allowed for people to grow and take leadership and come behind you, that's the only way you're going to leave something better than you found it. Is when you gone, it still continues to thrive and it still continues to be successful. And I think that's a blessing, and all of us got to remember that.
Man, I think that's tight. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, they say to be a boss, to be a leader, it's the people around you that you empower. And you have definitely put some phenomenal folks around you that are doing
amazing. And real quick, I just want to say, you also have to be able to follow. When I talk to folks all the time, they're like, well, how did you get in this role? How did you get in that? And I start talking about all the roles we played, growing up, all the jobs that I've had throughout the course of my year, throughout the course of my life. And people are like, but how do you do that? How did you get there? And I'm telling you, one job led to the next job, one role led to the next role. But I didn't wake up on the board of supervisors. I didn't wake up executive director of young community developers. We talking about 30 years of living, 30 years of working in community to get here, right? Nobody wakes up where they are, and people have to understand that, I had to follow some folks in leadership. I had to learn from them. I had to take the good from this leader. I had to take the good from this leader. I had to learn from the mistakes of that leader and culminate and develop my own leadership style, culminate and develop, how I wanted to show up for community. And a big part of that is being able to follow other folks, because you're not always that person in that position. And learning from other people is important. So when you do get that opportunity to lead, you have, you've been seasoned enough to be able to move in a certain direction. And people just got to understand, you don't wake up in certain positions. I mean, overnight successes happen. They're very rare, and they don't typically happen to people that look like you and me.
Man, that is definitely true. And you bringing up Dr. Saib, man, what a phenomenal gem of our community. I know you was at the conversation they had with Carnell West, man, to hear Dr. Said speak, man, and just talk about her African-American Samoan heritage and just talk about the things that have impacted her into her leadership role. It is phenomenal. Every time I hear her speak, I'm just, moved. And it is a true testament to all of the great folks around to just see that develop, man. I know it's proud days for you, but again, for me, just hearing her out in community and speaking some of the things that she speaks at and just some of the work she's doing behind the scene, I'm just impressed. So just great to see those developments in our community. Percy and DJ, Tim Waters, all the folks that are just continuing to evolve and helping our community is very, very tremendous. And it is needed. We need more leaders. We need more young folks to be a part of that. And I think we're headed in that direction. If we could just get our community folks to pull behind this train and get on and get aboard, we could definitely start moving D10 forward. But while I'm on this subject, or while we're getting into the community stuff, one of the things that's really impacted our San Francisco folks is when we talk about incarceration. They say it's 3 to 4% folks in San Francisco, but you look at the incarceration rate, it's 30, 40, 45% Black folks in incarceration in San Francisco County Jail and beyond. But Shaman, as you start, developing and looking at, I know the investments have been made into the reentry community to get folks back. And we had a spike of just outgoing violence taking place in D10, and things have quieted down. And I want you to talk to that because I think a lot of times, when things are happening in the community, we run and we jump on the supervisor, this and this, right? But there have been a number of investments, and you see the numbers really dropping as these young folks in the community are getting resources, getting opportunities. But just to talk about the number of incarceration and some of the stuff that's taking place over the months with this community violence and how those numbers offset, and looking at, the investment to those folks that's incarcerated, how do we continue that trend of investment, but also the reentry part as these folks are coming home to be supported in community?
Well, you answered a lot of the question when you talk about investment. I mean, the key is investment and making investment, and young folks making investment before actions take place. And we actually had a good thing going. Incarceration was down in the county jail system. Incarceration was definitely down in juvenile hall, and it's continued to stay down. For our youngest folks who may have made mistakes, and through the pandemic, we saw an increase of the county jail population. A lot of that is directly related to the opportunities that were lacking during the pandemic, the fact that folks weren't able to receive the same jobs or the same prevention services that were being provided before the pandemic. But we got to make an investment. And I think a lot of people really downplay the importance of a front-end investment, the importance of making sure that a young person learns how to read, the importance of making sure that young people in low income and disenfranchised communities have the same opportunities to play sports, have the same opportunities for academic support after school, the same opportunities for jobs. Because the reality of it is, the more options and the more choices you have, the better decisions you're going to make. You and I both been locked up at young ages. You and I both have been in positions where when something bad happened to us, we were going to make a reaction that was going to turn out to something that was negative, that would turn into a negative consequence. We don't do that anymore. It's not just because we're older. It's not just because we mature. It's also because we've been exposed to different things, and we know that we have options. If something goes bad because I did this way, or because I did this thing, then I'm going to go to my other option and my other opportunity. So we got to expose young folks to everything. We got to expose our transitional age youth and even our adults to every opportunity that's available, and provide them with the resources to be able to achieve it. So if it's a certain class that has to be taken, if it's a certain training that has to be taken, if it's a certain internship experience that has to happen, we got to make sure that that's provided. And that's what I try to do in my role, is eliminate any excuse, eliminate any barrier that would keep somebody from being able to achieve what they want. So if it's coming up with scholarship programs, if it's coming up with training programs, then those are the things that we have to continue to do. And yes, we've seen a decrease in violence happen with also the changes around the COVID virus and how it's affected our community. But we've also been intentional about making sure that these programs, these trainings, and these opportunities are available. But people don't necessarily always understand the investment in prevention, because to some folks you can't quantify it. But you can most certainly bet there's a reason why John Henry don't commit crimes. There's a reason why Shaman doesn't commit crimes. And that's because of investments that were made in us, that made us learn how to make certain decisions a certain way, so that we could achieve success and achieve or accomplish what the next steps are for us, without making a decision that was going to harm us and harm our family. That investment in prevention, that investment in starting early, that investment of exposure is everything. And once people start to realize that, then you won't see the same level of people committing crimes and making certain mistakes, because they will have the same opportunity of most folks. And that's how you get people from making decisions that are going to harm others and harm themselves.
Man, every time I listen to you speak, I just get excited. Shout out to Morris Brown, man. The
That's right.
college did some amazing
I got to
things.
rep my alma mater.
Yeah, they did some amazing things with you, man. I'm just, happy to be a part of it and get to see, the transition and the growth and the things that you're doing to impact the communities. But I want to jump into this real conversation that's going to impact the city and D10 and different communities. This redistricting thing. I've received so many emails and concerns about it. I have my concerns. I have an understanding of how it impacts community, but I'm still a little lost of like, how does it really impact us when our numbers are so low? And I really just wanted to see if you can enlighten us on it, whatever you can, because I know a couple of community leaders are watching right now, and they wanted me to ask that question about this redistricting. How is it really going to impact it? Is it worth the investment or the energy that folks are using? Because a lot of people feel like, it's already kind of mapped out how they want it. But just wanted to hear from your side and give us some insight of what you think and why it's important or how it could definitely impact us in the future in our communities in San Francisco.
Well, first of all, I just want to start off by saying in my role, I can in no way, shape, form, or fashion influence how the boundaries are drawn and what the changes are going to look like when it comes to redistricting. But what I can say is, this is a process that happens after you do the census. We count. We have the census every 10 years. And then because of population shifts and changes, we have to redistrict to make sure that there's equitable and equal representation across San Francisco. We've seen most of the growth in District 9, District 10, and District 6 over the last 10 years, which means more than likely there's going to have to be some type of shifts in the lines, particularly affecting those districts. For us as Black people and for us as folks in community in general, redistricting is very important. The decision of what neighborhoods and communities are going to be either maintain and stay in a certain district in a certain community, or be pushed out to another district in another community could impact us in ways that could be very detrimental. So for us, we are the last space where you have a good chunk of black folks and a good chunk of diversity in District 10. Obviously, if it was up to me, we would not lose anybody that we represent right now. I love representing the folks in District 10 across the board because we have amazing diversity. We have so much growth and opportunity. But the reality of it is there may be some shifts and changes. So people's participation and saying exactly what you want to see around redistricting, reminding folks that if lines are drawn a certain way, you may eliminate the fact that there will ever be a possibility for another Black district supervisor. You may eliminate the possibility for a fact that there may ever be another Latino or Latina district supervisor. These changes are very important and could be detrimental to communities. So folks have to come out and voice what they want to see. Folks have to come out and voice what they think is going to be equitable for their districts and their communities, because the decisions that get made around redistricting could be the blow that determines whether or not we have representation of certain ethnicities and cultures ever again in San Francisco. You already know how hard it is to be Black and get elected. You already know how hard it is to be Latino and get elected. You already know how hard it is in some communities to be Asian to get elected. And look at our Pacific Islander community and other communities that have no representation, our Filipino community. So we have to work hard and fight hard to get people to understand the importance of showing up at these redistricting task force meetings, showing up when they come to your community to talk about redistricting, voicing your opinion about what you think should be, what your district should look like, what the makeup should be. Because one of the things we do know is that we can make sure that that you do look at ethnicities, that you look at incomes, that you do look at the population in a certain district, because we want to make sure that you want to make sure at the end of the day, when we come out of this process, that there's still a possibility for everybody to be represented. So it's crucial and vital that folks participate. So if you're listening to this conversation, If somebody told you it doesn't make a difference, don't be concerned about it. It's not important. Your voice in redistricting is very important. When you get emails, when you get phone calls, when you get folks announcing these public meetings that are happening around redistricting, you need to voice your opinion. You need to talk about what's important to you, how you think you would be best represented, because that conversation is vital and crucial to the future of what leadership could look like here in San Francisco.
Wow. I mean, that's very important. I'm glad you broke it down that way. Right now, like I tell people all the time, this is the first time I've seen this much Black leadership in San Francisco. And, a lot of times our folks just don't get it. They don't understand. And I tell people all the time, we can't get caught up in the politics. Right now, we got to embrace that we do have Black and Latin leadership. We have folks in here that are doing things to help move our communities and forward, but we have to get involved. The turnout for this last past election was very sad to see the numbers from our community folks. And, that's one thing that we're really trying to do with our educational Thursdays is to start getting our folks the education, the information, awareness of how important it is to get involved with the civil process. I mean, we won't change. A lot of people in the community just want to scream about things, but we have to get a part of these processes to make sure that we are represented and that our voices are being heard, especially here at the local level. Too many times we wait, for the national level stuff to get everybody fired up and engaged. We got to keep that same energy for these local elections that are taking place, some of these local committees. There's a number of things that are coming out ahead, and I'm just glad that you broke it down in that space, because if you look at D10, the demographics of Black folks, that number is very low. You look across the city, at some of these areas where they're talking about redistricting, the numbers are very minimal. And again, if we don't get the right folks to be a part of it, and the way these lines going to be laid out could really impact the process of seeing representation that look like us. And we want to definitely keep people in the community who look like us, been through the community, understand what's going on in the community, so that we get a fair shot at what's going on and a heads up for the community to move it forward. So I think that's very important. And we're going to do our part to continue to keep issuing those community summons as they're having them for folks to show up, have their voices heard. Again, like Shaman said, he doesn't have a stake in where those lines go. But as community, we have a voice to help make sure that things are put in a place that we all benefit from, because we all know we are in a crisis in this city. And we're going to have to work together to make sure that funding, those resources, and the folks that are representing us are taking the things that we need to the table to be addressed. With that said, mental health is a big component to all of this, Shaman. And, I know there's a lot of investments and things going on to try to bring that mental health element to our community. But mental health and substance abuse is one of the two biggest driving forces, not only in D10, but across the city, and D6, D5. I mean, it is still an issue. And I every day trying to figure out, ways that we can make mental health cool, we can make mental health accessible. But just reading some of the articles that are young folks who are coming out of this pandemic, committing suicide, not because of the pandemic, just because of whatever the mental health issue or need is. How do we continue to advocate and make sure that these services get to our community? Or from a leadership standpoint, how do we encourage our community to continue step forward in the place of getting support services? It is just a tremendous pain for some of the emails that I get about folks who thinking about committing suicide or dealing with substance abuse. And it seems to be that, there are services, but just in certain pockets, getting access to those services can be challenging, or persuading enough to get, folks to buy in. But from your perspective as a leader in the community, how do we pull these resources in the community and make mental health cool so that we could get support not only for our young folks, but community folks in general?
Well, one, I'm glad you brought up the fact that we've seen folks take their lives during this pandemic, and we have to do everything that we can to make sure people have hope and understand that if you're going through something challenging, that there are opportunities and there are resources and supports out there. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't think people highlight enough about how many people have taken their lives and the reasons behind it, but more importantly, the fact that we have to do everything we can to show support to people. We have to see signs of depression. We have to see signs when folks are at their wits' end. And I know a lot of times, particularly in the work that we do when you're busy, you don't necessarily see all the signs, but that's something that we have to pay attention to and take it seriously. So I thank you for bringing that up. Mental health SF was passed and pushed by Supervisor Ronan and Supervisor Haney. And then we went right into this pandemic. And, mental health SF is a, a big policy with so many strategies to address the issues around mental health and also which relates to how we address the needs of our unhoused community. But it calls for having folks that respond in community that are trained and have the skill sets to deal with folks with mental illness. And, it's not about a police response. It calls for hiring a certain number of clinicians within the Department of Public Health, a certain number of nurses and medical supports and staff that, quite frankly, during the pandemic, we had to shift focus on responding to this major crisis where folks were getting the virus at unprecedented numbers, and we had never seen this before. So our Department of Public Health, our health system was really fractured and impacted by this pandemic. So now we're shifting back. Like, look, we have policy in place, we have the strategies in place. Now we got to put the resources in the areas to address the impacts of what we see on our streets around mental illness. And it is very real. The pandemic is very real. This is not about making excuses. And I know sometimes people don't want to hear it, but it's a reality. Things changed during the pandemic because our hospital system was exacerbated, our shelter system was exacerbated, and folks had nowhere to go because we could not have too many people in congregate settings. And even though we fought for shelter in place hotels and did everything we could to keep people safe during that, our system really was fractured in a lot of ways. But now, coming out of the pandemic, the strategies are in place, but the investment has to be there. To your point, we have to hire up the staff quick enough. We have to get the right folks responding to community and get folks into beds. Beds is a major issue as well. With the number of folks that we have in our communities that have needs, we don't necessarily have enough places for them to go. And so the investment in making sure that those exist are going to be of major importance as well. But it comes down to investment. We passed Prop C and we got challenged in court. So Prop C was the resources put in place to address homelessness in San Francisco. But we got a lot of resources that we can actually put in place now to address the strategies that have been put out and that have been developed. And we need to see those resources meet those strategies and come into fruition. And I think that we're going to start seeing improved outcomes because we're now open, because those resources are now able to be released. And this budget season, we have a bigger opportunity than we've had in the last couple of years to address those mental health needs and concerns. But I do want to say we have to do more around supporting our young folks and making sure that they are able to understand that they have support and see the signs. Because if we don't know the signs and we're not paying attention to the signs, we can lose a lot of people to suicide. We can lose a lot of people to self-inflicted harm because we don't know and understand what folks are going through. And that's a hard one, because I'm not trained to necessarily know what that looks like and know when somebody has really given up hope. And until we are given the tools that we need to see that, we won't be able to address some of the depression and some of the hopelessness that's out there.
Yeah, and it seems to be here in San Francisco a trouble to retain those type of folks, one who look like community folks. Just wanted to ask you, in any of those plans, like what we have for teachers to help with housing, or to get some of those folk from maybe the South to come in and kind of help out with some of this mental health need, because I know one of the biggest thing is getting Black clinicians to come here because of the cost of living. But is that a plan, or is that something that, from the board of supervisors standpoint, that they could draw up and bring up as part of that, or is that something that's outside of y'all realm of topic?
Well, most certainly what we wanted to do with the Dreamkeeper initiative, obviously, is to address mental health needs of the Black community and make sure resources are available for the organizations that have expertise in that area. But finding black clinicians are like they're like unicorns, and particularly black male clinicians and folks who have the credentials and the skills to do the work. I think a lot of it is pay. Our CBOs don't necessarily pay like the Department of Public Health. Um, Clinicians don't necessarily make the resources that they need to do the work in community, and so that's problematic. And so we have to look at more ways to incentivize moving to San Francisco and becoming a clinician. But it's not just astronomical to San Francisco. Like, we actually don't have the level of black clinicians that we need in the Bay Area, across the state and across the country. And so we got to make it more attractive and incentivize coming into these fields, just like we've tried with educators and certain programming. But we do need to make a conscious effort. If you look at what Urban Ed Academy is doing, going out to these historically black colleges and university and bringing black male teachers to teach at the elementary school level. Like, we need to take that same intentionality and go to these schools that have pools of folks that are educated and majoring in these fields of expertise to where they can become clinicians. And we got to go get them and bring them to San Francisco. I mean, part of what Urban Ed is doing is also providing housing for these folks, right? So they're eliminating certain barriers that would keep you from wanting to come to a city like San Francisco. And we're going to have to be that intentional about bringing black clinicians and about bringing certain fields of expertise into the black community if we want to see those outcomes change.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I'm screaming loud about this, and I've been on it, this mental health kick, because I feel like, during the COVID pandemic, one of the things that I saw, when the governor put in those emergency orders to kind of reduce the educational needs for nurses to get in there, because we had a shortage of nurses, right? And I was like, that concept needs to be taught in mental health, right? And I keep saying the amount of money that we invested in COVID, we need to be investing that type of money into mental health for our community, especially here in California, especially in San Francisco. But again, I talked to some of the clinicians. I've had them on our show. One is the pay, and then the access to how much schooling and training that they have. And I'm all in favor of like saying, hey, if a pandemic had happened and the governor was willing to, sign off to allow schools to let nurses come in at a lower educational rate to get in here because they needed bodies. We need to be thinking about that same model when we're talking about mental health in our community. But one of the things, and I'm glad you said it about the support and investment, because I wasn't so happy about when the mayor and them rolled out the crisis team, and just because of investment, right? And I get the intentionality of not having police interact with folks with mental health, because typically those interactions could turn into some type of harm or even death, right? And I get that. But when we're talking about in our communities, throughout the city, D10, the chronicness of illness, of mental health and support that's needed, just from the grieving loss of families, from losing their children, on to just the day-to-day living functions that some of our folks live in our communities. For me, when I thought of it, I looked at it, and it's always a great investment to invest in our fire department. But when you say $340 million plus, to invest in that, and I think back of like, if we took $340 million and we invested to bringing in clinicians to all of our communities' site hubs, even if we just started with the SF Hope locations, right? We could have paid clinicians over a six-figure salary, brought them in the community, and we could have probably got 10 to 12 clinicians for every community. Because right now, I talked to a couple of clinicians that's, in District 10, and it's about 5 clinicians for the whole district that deals with mental health services and things of that nature, right? But what an investment if we could have got long-term care for some of the chronic illness in our community with that type of investment. We could have put some folks up in there and been having day-to-day healing and wellness in our SF Hope sites, as well as some of the sites across the community.
But the one thing I say about that, the lack of clinicians in the area are not necessarily related to lack of resources, right? We have resources in place to bring on clinicians that are ethnically appropriate, that are language appropriate. We also just have to get those pool of folks that are out there. Most certainly, again, going back to your point about salaries and other incentives that are needed to survive in the Bay Area, it's an issue, but there's also has to be the pool of folks that are available to come do those jobs. Most certainly, we have the will and the opportunity for the resources to bring in more of these folks that are prepared and ready to come into community with that expertise and that look like community, but that pool also has to exist as well. So yes, there's resource components, but there's also the availability of folks that want to do this job and do this work in our communities.
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. I've talked to a couple of folks, and it is a package that come with it. It's not just the salary, but it is a package. Just having the security for folks to come and do this work as well. Because in some of our communities, it's a challenge for folks to go in these areas and do this work. So it is a number of issues, but again, just happy to hear that there's plans. At least there's conversations happening about how we're going to be able to impact the community. Because I think if we could deal with the mental health and the housing, I think a lot of the dynamics of the community changes, because I think also because of the mental health, folks get introduced to the drugs and different things of that nature. So definitely got a lot of work there, with community. But community folks, Shaman's here. If y'all want to ask some questions and comments, please get them in the chat. We already an hour in this thing. We don't want to hold El Presidente up too long. He's been gracious to give up his Sunday to come talk with community. So if you have any questions, put it in the comments, because I think, it's a great chance. I know some of you may have wanted to ask some questions, and I think this is a good time to do that. But Shaman, in our community, some of the spaces, I know you've been really fighting on getting the spaces back. Martin Luther King Park opened back up. A number of the spaces in the community are open back up. And then I also want to say, what a tremendous job of getting the Baby View sign up there at the top of the hill off of the freeway. I've been seeing folks pulling over, getting pictures and things of that nature. But I think that's been a commitment of yours, when you talk about revitalizing and re-beautifying the Bayview, man, just making it feel like a community, making it feel like, it's home for folks. You all been doing a number of those things, opening up, the cultural district, and just opening up things for hope in our city. How do you keep that momentum, keep making the district beautified and continue to just overcome those obstacles of changing the narrative of what Bayview and D10 is really all about?
I think it's a continuing delivering on the things that you say you were going to do and the things that people were asking for. Like, a lot of people don't know, we've probably remodeled and revitalized about 5 parks in the last couple of years. So MLK Pool, with Casey Jones Playground at the park, as well as the baseball fields and everything, up in Northridge, and what we've done with the parks there, Phelps and Palouse Park. Like, there's a lot of changes that have been made. The amphitheater in McLaren. We have done a lot working with RPD and working with folks in community. And by the way, community took the lead to make sure that all this has happened. Silver, and looking at what we've done with the fields over there and the park over there. So there's been some intentionality of making sure that we do everything we can to improve community. We want folks to, one, when you live in District 10, be able to walk to state-of-the-art facilities, state-of-the-art places, just like everywhere else. But 2, we also want the rest of San Francisco to come and enjoy the beauty and enjoy everything that we have to offer. So what has happened with our parks is something that we are excited about. What is happening with, again, what we talked about before, businesses opening in our communities are something we're excited about. What we talked about before in terms of building these vibrant communities that hold on to a lot of history, but also provide an opportunity for new spaces and new creation is important. I mean, Pier 70 is amazing for the district. The power station and what's going to happen there is amazing for the district. We're going to have a new YMCA facility, new facilities for folks to get outdoors, more open space coming. If you look at Crane Cove Park and the access to the water and what we're able to do in community and areas like that, there's so many hidden gems in District 10 and so many things that we promised that we're going to do that are happening. And we just got to continue to stay committed to delivering on the things that we promised in community and delivering on what was asked for, and focus on getting more foot traffic and coming out of this pandemic, because a lot of the things that are here or were on the way that are impacted by the pandemic, we got to make sure that we are able to reverse some of those negative impacts, because people are frustrated. They do feel boxed in from some of the investments that they made personally to small business or in community that haven't come into fruition. But just want people to know that we stay committed to provide policies to alleviate the burden and policies to follow through on the things that we committed to do. And you see a lot of that happening, but most certainly we got more work to do. And I want everyone to know that the fight for achieving and obtaining the things that we said we were going to do are still here.
Man, very powerful stuff. And then on the forefront, if you could give community any updates, in D10, there's been definitely, when we talk about equity and we talk about disparities, when we talk about this digital divide, there's been so many issues with cell phone, fiber optics. And I know there's a big push. I know your office is pushing about some of those changes. Where are we at with, making sure that our folks in D10 get the same fiber optics, access to internet and Wi-Fi as other parts of the city? I know that, being around the water and different things like that really impact how, services divided out to community. But there's a lot of cell drop spots, a lot of Wi-Fi issues that community are still struggling with, even coming out of this pandemic. As we know, during the pandemic, we had our kids in school, and that was a struggle. But thanks to the CBOs and the different organizations and some of the work you all pushed to get free Wi-Fi up to the community, but it's still an issue, and I know it's something that's a long-term, thing to be fixed in our community. But if you could give us any light on it, or where you at, or anything that you heard about, some of the communication for D10.
Well, we continue obviously to work with our Department of Technology. At the end of the day, it's a cost conversation. It's going to take a couple $100 million to get free Wi-Fi across San Francisco and build the infrastructure that we need, and it's something that we are focused on. You could see in the future conversations about some type of bond or some type of way to fund building out that infrastructure so that we could have free Wi-Fi for everyone. And I'm talking about effective, equitable, high-speed Wi-Fi for everyone here in San Francisco. A private company is not going to do it. We know that they work on a profit margin, and not because they care about the social effect of folks who are left out. And so we continuously have conversations about how to get the resources to do it, because we know the price tag, and we're going to continue to work on that. But in the meantime, what has been done, and to your point, we actually do have nonprofits that have been providing hotspots in some of our communities, nonprofits that have been providing devices in some of our community. I would say one thing the school district did very well during the pandemic was get a device into the hands of all of our students. And that's no small feat for the number of folks in San Francisco, number of students in San Francisco who needed to be connected and have connectivity. But even with the devices, we had to work hard and get some CBOs who were able to provide that internet access through hotspots. And we even had communities allowing connectivity in their own homes so that other young people would have opportunity to be connected and thrive and try to be able to perform in school. So that was a long answer just to say that conversation continues, working on what the resources, who we're going to get the resources from is the main obstacle. But we're going to stay committed, and in the meantime, do all the things that we can for connectivity until we can realize that vision of free Wi-Fi, high speed connectivity for everyone in San Francisco, and every nook and cranny and every corner, particularly, of course, here in the Southeast, that has always had difficulty in achieving that technology, equitability.
Man, that's very powerful. I'm glad to hear you still working on it, because I get a lot of complaints about it. These young folks, they can't get access to their internet. So just nice to hear you all working on that. And if it turns out to be a bond, what a way to invest in our city for our city folks. because we need that technology to make sure that our kids and our community get equity, especially our seniors, as they are always trying to navigate and utilize this social media and technology. So it'd be definitely a great deal for them. And then I guess transportation updates, since you're here, I know you've been pushing. There's been a lot of things with Muni, getting these cars and these buses back in our community. I know there was a big drop off of the amount of service in the community because of the pandemic and drivers being off and routes being changed. And if you could give us any updates of what's going on. I know there was some extra buses that was added to some of the tight spots in Hunters Point. But if you have any updates on the transportation, I think that'll be something great for community as well, because I know they've been waiting for those updates.
Yeah, our push as an office obviously was to get more academies, more training, so we can get more operators out on our bus routes and on our trains and community. But we've been fortunate during the pandemic. I know a lot of people know we bought the 15 back, not the same route, but it is an express route that does go through community and get folks downtown quickly and quicker than the T line. And that's something that everybody was asking for. We were able to do that. We did stop switchbacks early in our tenure, which is something that we're excited about. But due to COVID, due to the impacts of COVID, there are a lot of operators that have been out. We were able to maintain most of our bus lines. We're fighting hard now for the 8AX and the 8BX to get our folks from Visitation Valley to Chinatown, because that route was tremendously and is tremendously important to our folks in the district. And that's supposed to come back in April. And that's been something that we've been committed to making happen. But we're trying to get the full service. We're trying to make Muni more affordable for everyone. Obviously, we were able to give free Muni for all of our young people, and that was important. But we want to continue to do everything we can to make price and cost for Muni not even be a factor. And so you're going to see that continue. We want to get back to the rapidity of all of our bus lines and the T train here in the district, and that's the main commitment. But there are some realities in terms of the number of folks who have been out because of the virus, the number of folks who even have left MTA, and making sure that we increase the number of operators that are out there so that we can bring our bus back into full service. I am fighting for a MTA bond for the June election. It's a $400 million bond to make sure that we're able to handle all the maintenance concerns and maintain the public transportation system that we have. We have a lot of shovel-ready projects that are in place that we need to make sure are funded. And so it is important to support this bond, because it really is about the future of our quality transportation system that is MTA. And even with the challenges and concerns that we all have with MTA, being able to maintain the system and make sure the resources are available to get those shovel-ready projects financed is important.
Man, very, very important stuff. Well, I only got a couple more questions. I ain't gonna hold you up all day, Brother Shaman. I appreciate you coming on and just talking to the community and just letting community see your face, because I think, I know most people get access to seeing you, and we also want to just give community time to show that, hey, you hear any questions to take and deal with, but also with your leadership. Want to salute you, because a lot of the bills you put in place, some of the things that you've been doing for Black folks in the community is trailblazing, trail setting. I just saw the other day another city. I can't think of the city right now, but they're trying to put in the same type of caring act and some of the things that you're doing. And I mean, your vision, to understand why this is so important. I remember when you was talking to me about why it was so important to do this. I mean, to see right now in our country, even after the George Floyd and after some of the stuff that has taken place, racial profiling, these phone calls from these Karens, these incidents are on an uptick in this country. And it just goes to show your vision and your leadership to think about that here for the city and county of San Francisco, to be the first to lead it. I'm starting to see other folks jumping on that, because this is a huge a problem. Just seen a couple of articles where the lady had called the police in Chicago and ended up getting one of the young folks shot and arrested. Different things happening. But some of these bills that you've been putting on the ballot to help shape the vision of how things are, man, has just been tremendous. So just want to thank you about that. But, how do you feel when you behind some of this stuff that's actually changing our country, man. People are following, and you're doing your thing. How does that make you feel to see that people are catching on?
Well, I think the thing, historically, we have just been getting screwed over as Black people in this country for centuries, right? And so if you look at something like the Karen Act and the fact that we saw so many Black folks being harassed just for existing, and this goes back to 1955 and what happened with Emmett Till and the false accusations that were made that led to his lynching and the devastation of a 14-year-old and being murdered and killed in that way, in that manner. And to fast forward to 2020, at the time when we pushed the legislation to make sure that if folks are calling the police on individuals for just being Black or just being a part of any protected class, then there should be a consequence. So that lady who was out in Central Park yelling and screaming that this Black man was harassing her and attacking her. I mean, she was yelling and screaming. Can you imagine how police are going to respond when they show up and hear that? You saw folks barbecuing in the park in Oakland, and how the lady just bothered them and walked up to them, and it's like these things don't require a police response, first of all, and we're only knowing more and more about this, which we've already known about for, again, centuries. But because of social media, because folks are being caught on camera, and I've had people who have made these phone calls that violated people's rights and call me and try to say that their life is being ruined. Well, maybe you should have thought before you decided to do something that was discriminatory, that was racist, that was prejudicial. Like the family that called the police on the Filipino man who was writing Black Lives Matter on his own home here in San Francisco. And when that came out, that family was economically impacted, and they felt sorry only after the consequences. But you cannot violate people's rights. You cannot send law enforcement to hurt and harm people and get away with it. And so it's good to see that people across the country are working on policies to make that illegal and to make sure that we do everything we can to keep people out of harm's way. And that's the bottom line. And that's all I ever wanted to do, was make sure that as Black people, we could do what everybody else in the country gets the ability to do. And that's live our lives, raise our children, enjoy our communities, have a good time, do the work that we were put here to do, and do it in a way where we not being harassed or mistreated just because we Black.
Man, very powerful stuff. And, thank you again for that. As this anti-Blackness is so real, people think it's not. I mean, I've been watching the stories in Ukraine. Our African brothers and sisters are not being allowed to cross the borderline. And the guys on there say, hey, they let the white ladies go and the ladies with the dogs go before us. So again, we are still being devalued as human beings, even across this world, not just here in San Francisco and the Bay Area, but across this world. It is sad to see the amount of hate that still takes place. We talk about white supremacy. We talk about white privilege in this country and across the world is being seen now far over there in Ukraine, Poland, how Black folks are being treated coming into these spaces is just, unacceptable. And we got to continue to fight. And as Black community, brown community, we have to stand in solidarity. And this is why I've been a part of these solidarity calls and really trying to have these difficult conversations, because I think it is really a time for solidarity. But we also have to think and understand that solidarity means that we are fighting for all cultures, all creeds, genders, all year long, for all of these different events and situations that impact our community, because we still are far from a place of fairness and justice around this world and in this country, especially here in the Bay Area. Still a lot of work that we have to do. But, thank you, Shaman, for taking that leadership and, just having that foresight, man. A lot of times people don't understand what leadership is really about. And definitely you are a face of leadership when we talk about demonstrating what's possible, coming from where you come from, overcoming the obstacles, going to Morris Brown, coming back to the city you love so much, and leading, right? Leading by example. This is what we need when we talk about leadership and how we're going to move our communities and forward. And, just want to say thank you because, again, not only you have impacted our community, you have impacted me on understanding what is my role to help, energize our community, bring these resources and information to our community, continue to do more to uplift.
And,
Because
and real quick, John, I do just want to, thank Director Davis with the Human Rights Commission, Brittany Chikwata from her staff, Natalie G from my office for coming up with the acronym for the CAREN Act, Caution Against Racial and Exploitative Non-Emergency Calls. But there are a lot of people that work together to make sure that legislation was passed, to make sure that it was possible. And so I just want to say, the community was behind that. All the support we got overwhelmingly at the Board of Supervisors or the mayor's office, like getting policy like that, that's life-changing and most certainly something that we haven't witnessed and seen before, takes everyone working together. And I do want to acknowledge that.
Man, we definitely don't want to cut none of that short. Definitely want to give a huge shout out, to Director Davis for all the phenomenal work that she's doing to impact community. I always tell her she's a genius. She they laugh at me. I go, her thought process and her intentionality and how she thinks about, programming and what it looks like. When we talk about narrative shift, how do we change the conversations for our community? Definitely Director Davis is a powerful figure of our community. We have some amazing leaders, and thank you to our mayor for also just supporting some of it. We got a lot of work to do, but it's, again, when we talk about leadership and you talk about the pillars of our leadership of San Francisco right now, starting off with the board president, Shaman Walton, our mayor, Director Davis, a number of community folks and some of the elders in the community that's really trying to drive this change. It's just amazing. And we're going to keep doing it, and it's going to continue to take conversations and folks to show up to support community like you always do. We just celebrated 35 years of Omega Live and Free the other night with Dr. Marshall and Jack. You was there for giving Jack his honorable services. And, that's what it's really all about, and just watching you all develop and grow and do the things that you all do is very impressive. As I always tell you, it's impressive because I don't know how you deal with it. I got the family, I got the grandbaby. I'm getting 2 hours of sleep, and I mean, every time I look around, you had 20 events. I'm trying to be at 20 events. You got the grandkids and the family, and I just want to say that's commendable. And just want to say thank you, Shaman, because as a Black man, often too much as Black men in our community, we don't uplift each other and we don't say thank you and we don't say we love you, right? And I always tell people, I don't care about the political crap, right? Whatever people got their opinion on, but as a Black man, as a leader of our community, as a mentor to so many, I just don't want to let this time go by to just say thank you for your leadership, the seeds that you have planted for our community. A lot of them are developing and growing, and some need more water, more time, but they're coming. And, just want to say thank you, brother to brother, because at the end of the day, as Black men, this is what we need to see: the empowerment of Black folks, uplifting each other, especially our Black males, being able to be vulnerable and come out and speak our truth. Too many of us are in silence, and we just appreciate you for standing up, not only for you, your family, but community, and still leading and trying to push us forward. I think it's very, phenomenal and patriot of you, because a lot of times I know we always hear about the negative stuff and we don't hear about the positive. And just want to say thank you for always being a stand-up guy and always being a true a man of your word and humility and compassion that you have for our community. So thank you, and just wanted to say that.
No, thank you, and thank you again for just giving a lot of our folks an opportunity to come and talk to community and do it in a public space where you can have a conversation and people see it. I mean, you've been trailblazing and making this happen, and you came in and said, I want to come up with a platform that provides voice for community and do it in a way that we haven't seen before, and you've done that. And so obviously I'm gonna continue to support you, and I'm thankful that you're doing this, providing this opportunity, not just for me, but for everybody in community to be heard. And that voice is important because we haven't seen this done in this way. We haven't seen this done as consistently. And you already know I'm committed to community 100%. That's why I make myself available. That's why I spend time in my community, because again, I'm supervisor, 8 years if I'm blessed and lucky, but our community is still going to be here, and we still got a lot of work to do, and we got to do it together. So I'm just humbled to be in this role and be in this position, and again, obviously, you know how much I love you and how much respect I have for you, and just glad that we're able to do this as two black men, and making sure other black men have opportunities for similar.
I just seen the wife walk by, tell me, so I said hello. But yeah, so yeah, thank you. It's been a tremendous amount of support, and we just thank you, and we don't never want to let that go. And that's why I want to make sure that we give you your flowers, and I want a community to hear from you, as a lot of important things are going to be coming up over the next couple of months. I know the re-election is happening in November. I mean, community, these are the type of folks, when we talk about authentic, we talk about real, about the people. Here's a guy that's standing up and doing this work for our community. We're going to continue to just watch him flourish. But again, we got to get involved, community. We got to keep notice of what's going on and staying involved. And we're going to do our part here. As information comes from the city, we're going to make sure that these events, these committees, and all this information gets out to you all, so that you all have an opportunity to have your voice heard. Again, it's not about persuading anybody. It's not about getting behind anything. It's really about educating our community, bringing that awareness, and making sure that you all have the right information, so you can make the discernment on your decision as things are coming up that's going to really impact our community and how we move forward. It's been an amazing 4 years, Shema. 4 more years. It'll be great to see the development. And I know you got a number of things that you got sitting there that you want to do to impact our community. And we just hope through the support of community, we get to see those come into fruition, because you have some great ideas. You're very innovative. And again, just seeing some of the things you've already put in place, how it's starting to trickle down and impact not only here in California, but the rest of this country, is very powerful. And we're just going to continue to support and uplift you. So with that being said, before we close out, if there's anybody you want to acknowledge that you missed, because I know how it is, like, you didn't say nothing. We got to acknowledge Corey Monroe, got to acknowledge nephew, love nephew. I know he's watching. Big part of this community, baby advocates doing the work for our folks that's unhoused. Got to acknowledge Corey before the end of this one. But if it's anybody or anything you want to say, any final words, please do it now before we wrap up today's segment.
Well, like you said, a lot of people know. Some people don't know, but Corey Monroe, who is my uncle, was my first mentor, first person I ever looked up to, and he started doing this community work years ago, and I just learned from him, learned from watching him, and been blessed to have someone in my life that I'm close to that demonstrated how you work with young people, that demonstrate how you work in community, and do it in a manner, in a way where you actually connect with folks, and folks really, really listen to the things that you say and how you lead. So of course, got to give a shout out to him. I really want to give a shout out to not so much individuals, because I'm a miss names, but I do want to give a shout out to Black Wall Street, SF Black, and Mega Black, and to all the entities and organizations that are really just working to make the plight better for Black folks here in San Francisco. I want everyone to remember that we have to stay united. We got to stay tight like a fist, and remember that the more we let people infiltrate the work that we're trying to do, the more that we don't focus on what our goals and our mission are together, the more separated and divided we're going to be, and the worse it's going to be for our folks in our community. So just when we have disagreements, when we're not on the same page sometime, just remember that this comes from a space of love and a space that everybody trying to accomplish goals together. And we're not going to agree all the time, but most certainly, if we let people infiltrate the work that we're trying to do in the good, which is better for all of us, then it's going to lead to negative outcomes. And if I'm fortunate enough to do this a few more years, if the mayor is fortunate enough to be in her role a few more years, we have to build the future of leadership, because it can't end with me. It can't end with Mayor Breed. It can't end with the John Henrys. It can't end with the leadership that we have in our community right now. We got to continue to build it, continue to nurture it, continue to grow it, so that our folks can be successful and be around for a very long time. It only happens if we continue to work with folks and demonstrate how to do things appropriately, and that's staying tight-fisted.
Man, very powerful stuff. As y'all see, this is what leadership, I've been saying it all along, right? To me, leadership is those folks who can demonstrate what's possible. Today has been an amazing conversation with Brother Shaman Walton. And you can just see the demonstration of his leadership through the conversation and things that he's doing to impact the community. It's always great. And to our allies out there, you heard it best. You know, we got to make sure that if you come in to support us, come to support us, and not come in there to run or tear down the already harm and things that's been done to our community. So our allies, when we talk about support to the Black community, support to our Black organizations, come to support, not to tear down what's already been going on in our community. Too much harm has already been placed on our community. We're going to stand up and fight against that. And we're going to always work with everybody, but we're not going to allow these phony folks to come in to infiltrate our organization and hold our organizations hostage and make sure that our communities thrive. And that's our job. So again, if you come with love and support, come to love and support, but don't come in to tear down our organizations and don't come in to tear down our communities, because our communities have already been impacted so much. We need everybody moving in the essence of love. Like Brother Carnell West said so eloquently, we have to move in love and we got to keep moving. We have been in a place of standstill and neutral for too long. And as these intersections start to move together, as our communities start to bond, this strength that is needed, we have to do it now as inflation is increasing, this war is increasing, the cost to live day to day is increasing. So it's going to take us as a community village to help support each other. And we're going to do our part here at both sides of the conversation to make sure any resources or information to get resources for our community is out there, whether it's food, whether it's housing, whether it's COVID, anything that we can do to make sure that our community gets that information to get access to those services. We will do it because we are in a crisis right now. There's no time to wait. There's no more rainy days. The rainy day is now, and we need all of our community folks active, out in community, supporting, finding a way. We need all of our volunteers. We need all the people from the community to get behind an organization, get behind his leadership, support it, and let's move it forward so that our community can be impacted as we need it more than ever. So just wanted to put that out there. Thank you all for tuning in for this Sunday conversation. Next Tuesday will be our next live segment where we'll be highlighting our Black and brown businesses as well as our community leaders and organizations that positively impact our community. And when you get a second, go and support our Black businesses. Shaman does it so eloquently, but community, let's go out there and buy a drink, buy a hat, go support our Black businesses so that they can thrive. Coming out of this pandemic, there's going to be a challenge. A lot of them lost staffing, and us coming to patronize those businesses will help uplift them so that we can create that economical power that we need in our community with ownership so that we can be in space. So with that being said, thank you, Shaman, for giving up some of your time. Tell the family I said hello. Definitely. And we'll see you soon out in community as we always run into you, being a blessing to the people.
Thank you. And I just want to give one last shout out to the entire District 10 team, Natalie, Tracy, Abe, and Percy. I love and appreciate all the work you do for our community, and we're going to keep it going.
Man, that's what's up. Hey, shout out to them as well. And to our both sides of the conversation team member that's down. We still here. We support you. We praying for you for your betterness to get well. And to our other community folks who are dealing with illness, I just want to keep you all up in prayers and uplift them into the family who tragically dealt with a community lost loved ones to suicide. We just want to go ahead and just say, our prayers are with you. Tragically, when you lose someone in that nature, it is very difficult. Grief is real, and community, do your part to support the loved ones. See you all soon. See you on Tuesday. Be safe out there. Enjoy your family and loved ones, and we'll continue to do the work here, pushing our communities forward. We love you. We see you soon. Have a blessed evening.